Hello, my name is Katie Vela Hernandez, and my topic is processing speed. So, my question is, what is the relationship between ADHD, processing speed, and social emotional health? So, the reason I chose this question is because I've recently discovered this term called processing speed, as I've always been someone that's been really slow when it comes to academics or social interactions. And so, I recently had this urge to discover if anyone else had this experience or if it had a title, and I did. So figuring out that there is this term called processing speed, it really helped me as I've been struggling with it more recently than I did like in high school and then trying to cope with it. And so that's what inspired me to research more about processing speed. And so the reason why I'm now searching the relation between ADHD, processing speed, and social emotional health is because when searching processing speed, ADHD is nearly brought up most of the time since it seems like they're kind of correlated with one another, but I'll get more into that in a bit. And then social emotional health, as articles that I looked into covered things that fall into the category of social emotional health. So that's what influenced me to make this research question. So, concerning my background information, so just to give a definition, a simple definition of processing speed. Processing speed is how quickly one takes in, interprets, and responds to information. So if one is quicker at it, quicker reactions, quicker thinking, quicker to stimuli, or slower to it, slower to understand stimuli, information, stuff like that. And I got that from Cleveland Clinic, which is the first website I personally found when I was making my own research a while ago. And then just to define ADHD real quick, one of my articles defined it like this since they put a higher emphasis on inattention and hyperactivity impulsivity. So they defined ADHD as a common childhood psychiatric disorder characterized by developmentally extreme symptoms of inattention and hyperactivity impulsivity. Yes, and so that was from Thorson et al. 2018. And so, to define psychopathology factor, I am defining it here as background information because one of my articles focuses on the P factor, and I wanted to mention real quick how it is mentioned or brought up or what it is. So, psychopathology, when it's brought up, they're referring to a P factor model, and it is a term that captures the common variances across a wide range of mental health symptoms. They also tend to use it when wanting to refer to mental health difficulties or symptomology in general like psychopathology, symptomology. So that's how it tends to use it. And then to define clinical high risk, as another article of mine focuses on it. So clinical high risk is those at high risk of developing later psychosis symptoms or schizophrenia. And I got that from the article Chouet et al. 2017. So, and then to define social emotional health in general, I wanted to show the importance of it. Um, um, from Kaiser Permanente. So they stated strong social emotional health enables an individual to integrate their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in a way that supports greater health and well-being in life. So I'm showing this to show how processing speed in general then affects social emotional health in general when I bring up the other factors I do later on. So my first article was an empirical article called Processing Speed Mediates the Longitudinal Association Between ADHD Symptoms and Pre-Adolescent Peer Problems by Thorson et al. 2018. So what they were trying to figure out in their research question was what was the relationship between dimensional aspects of inattention and hyperactivity impulsivity in childhood and peer problems. So they mostly focused on ADHD and how that affects or leads to peer problems in the future. So yeah, this was my only article that focused on ADHD more than my other ones. So some information on methods about this article was that their study had about 127 children and 32 had ADHD specifically, so not all of them did, but so what this study was doing was collecting data from them concerning their inattention and hyperactivity impulsivity like symptoms, and how they got this information was from the collection of data. So they asked the parents if their children showcase any inattention or hyperactivity impulsivity like symptoms, um, and so they did reports like that. So they sent these questionnaires to the parents. So there was a strength and difficulties questionnaire, and then there was a Swanson, Nolan, and Pelham IV questionnaire. And so these children were second and fourth graders, and the parents were asked to fill this out concerning if they thought their child had inattention or hyperactivity impulsivity symptoms. And then it like just followed the questionnaire is following a Likert type scale. So things like, oh, do you think this is true? Not true, likely true, things like that. So then there was a second phase, and then the parents were asked to take a short physical examination if their child had a high score, reflecting peer problems, since the study is asking if these inattention or hyperactivity impulsivity leads to peer problems. So the children that had higher scores reflecting that were asked to come in, and then they did a physical examination. Yes. So that's my basic information. Sorry, that was a lot. So the results of this study was that processing speed is significantly showcases a predictive relation between childhood inattention and later peer problems. And then that adolescent social functioning is affected by two factors within early childhood, inattention and processing speed specifically. So how this relates to my question is that inattention within children is found to be the biggest predictor leading to processing speed being affected. So if inattention was found within these children, um, that was a predictor to processing speed being shown as a factor later in the future. So another thing is that processing speed mediates a linkage to peer problems in the future, and that inattention and processing speed are correlated to pre-adolescent peer problems. So what this article emphasized was that um, the showcasing of inattention and processing speed being correlated to one another does correlate to peer problems later in the future, so in the pre-adolescent phase. Yes. All right, and so my second resource was also an empirical study. So it was called Processing Speed is Related to the General Psychopathology Factor in Youth by Kramer et al. 2023. So their research question was, what's the association between general psychopathology, P factor, and latent processing speed in a sample of youth? So they did have a hypothesis. So they hypothesized that processing speed would be significantly negatively associated with the P factor, meaning a slower processing speed is linked to greater general mental health symptomology. So basic information and methods about this one is it was a community-based twin study. And it consisted of 796 participants between the ages of 11 to 16. And so these were all twins. And so what they did was um, decide if these adolescents were eligible or not, if one or the other had, one or the other, either both had attentional or reading difficulties. And then how they gathered all this information was through self and caregiver reports concerning internalizing and externalizing symptoms. So the adolescent themselves would do a self-report and write about or fill out the questionnaire regarding their internalizing symptoms, and then the parents did the externalizing since they're the ones that see from the outside. And so what they did, they had two different testing sessions. And so within these two testing sessions, they had four within each testing processing speed and seeing how it affects them in correlation to mental health difficulties. So the results with the study is that their hypothesis was correct. And so they found that processing speed is connected to psychopathology symptoms and mental health difficulties. So there, in relation to my study, and my question is that there is a clear correlation between processing speed and the general psychopathology factor, which means the overall mental health difficulties. So that processing speed is strongly associated with multiple mental health issues as it is transdiagnostic, so it can be applied overall. So my third article was also an empirical study, and it was called pupillometer-based neurofeedback cognitive training to improve processing speed and social functioning in individuals at clinical high risk for psychosis. So this one is specifically, they did a study to see if this training room could improve processing speed. And although it does state it's for those at clinical high risk for psychosis, there was some information in there that I was able to apply to my question. So it worked out for me. So yes. So their research question was, what's the impact of processing speed specific training on social functioning in individuals at clinical high risk? So some general information with this one is that there were in total 62 participants from a child and adolescent early psychosis program. And the 62 participants were grouped into two separate groups. And they did it in a way so it wasn't biased. So they didn't let anyone know like what was going on, or like even the people that conducted the study themselves. So there was the active control group and the processing speed training group. And then what they did with these two groups was within the span of 2 months, they gave them training, in total of 30-hour training, to see if it would improve their processing speed, and then hence to see if the improved processing speed improved their social functioning. So participants were assessed on their cognition, symptoms, and functions at different points, and they were assessed using different tests and then self-reports. So like similar tests as the ones my previous articles used, and then self-reports to see if the adolescents themselves felt that their social functioning did improve or not, etc. So the results with this one is that improvements in social processing speed were associated with improvements in functioning. So their testing and training did work, and there was positive results in testing. There was better social function after. So, and this was noted across everyone, regardless of the condition of the adolescent. So if they were to develop psychosis or schizophrenia later in life, or not. So this general information applied to everyone, and it showed that processing speed improved no matter what. So that's how it relates to my question. So in relation to social emotional health, processing speed can predict an individual's social function, as they showed improvements led to improved social functioning, leading to an improved social emotional health. So to synthesize all the research that I did and answer my question. So to answer my question of what is the relationship between ADHD, processing speed, and social emotional health, it was shown that I personally think there is a clear correlation between each of these factors. So processing speed tendencies tend to show up or be connected to those who have ADHD. So in connection to that processing speed and ADHD, although it was stated that there isn't a clear answer on the causation or if one triggers the other, there most definitely is a there most definitely has been found, they have been found to coexist with each other, even if one doesn't cause the other, one does. There isn't a clear answer to the causation yet. But during my research, ADHD was frequently brought up whenever I would search for processing speed. So this tends to strengthen the notion that they are correlated to one another. Yes, so to help support my answer, Thorson et al. 2018 highlights ADHD individuals, specifically their processing speed and how it affects them later in pre-adolescence. So the correlation is highlighted in this excerpt. Children with ADHD-I show slower processing speed compared to individuals with other presentations of ADHD. So this specifically means that those with ADHD-I are affected by processing speed more significantly, showcasing a clear correlation between processing speed and ADHD than in those with like any other diagnosis or none. So this, I personally think, supports my question. And yes, so and in correlation to social emotional health, Processing speed influences adolescents' social emotional health corresponding to their social relations and mental health symptomology. So, in identifying adolescents with slower processing speed, an impact on their social interactions or functions have been showcased. Two of my sources both emphasize this correlation between processing speed and poor social functioning and or problems with peers. So, and just to define real quick, poor social functioning entails of social skill deficits or poor understandings of social cues or lack of remembering details concerning interactions. For example, Choi et al. 2017 with their longitudinal study, oh my bad, demonstrated that individuals at clinical high risk who have better processing speed have significantly lower likelihood of poor social functioning. So, although it noted that those with better processing speed showed less poor social functioning, this draws attention to the contrary. So, basically showing that and emphasizing that reduced processing speed is correlated to poor social functioning. Yes. So, and also, although Choi et al. 2017 is focused on patients at clinical high risk, um, I believe their findings and trainings could apply to adolescents in general, as they concluded in their study, showing that improvements in social functioning regardless of one's condition. So, and then in connection to Thorson et al. 2018, they highlighted that poor social functioning is in correlation to those with inattention. So again, to that ADHD aspect of it. So in correspondence to the mental health symptomology of processing speed, whether it's related to mental health difficulties or not, throughout my research, processing speed had been correlated to overall mental health difficulties. Although I can't say if one causes the other, there is a linkage and it has been found between the two. So they are in positive relation to each other as a more presence of reduced processing speed, slower processing speed is linked to an increased general psychopathology in youth, meaning more mental health symptomology, so and so. So to kind of conclude my synthesis, there is a clear relationship between processing speed and social emotional health. Previously, I referred to the study highlighting the improvements of processing speed leading to the thrive in social interaction. This cements that slower processing speed is in positive association with social emotional health, as this graphic organizer showcases. So the more ADHD and attention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity leads to a more social emotional health problem increase as slower processing speed mediates that. Yes, so the slower the processing speed, the more difficulties or decrease an adolescent will have with their mental health or social skills. So, contrary as well, I made this other graphic organizer as I felt that it represented well the relations between each of these factors. Um, so it showcases that an improvement in processing speed will also lead to better conditions. So yes, I made these two because I felt they represented well, showing if there is an increase in processing speed, then there is better social emotional health outcomes. Or if there is a slower processing speed, there is a decrease in social emotional health for an adolescent. Yeah. So some recommendations in correlation to this question and also to my articles is that schools should investigate the advantages of processing speed training to implement it in the near future when more research has been done in connection to Choi et al. Since I mentioned more research has been done, as in a lot of these articles, there isn't much existing information out there yet on processing speed and its correlation to mental health or the outcomes of it or how to improve it yet. So to create more research, it would help with that in correlation to this next recommendation. So to recommend researchers. So researchers should continue exploring the connection between processing speeds and mental health difficulties to understand the overall effect of a slower processing speed. And then researchers should continue researching the outcome of processing speed to develop effective intervention strategies that can prevent negative social and mental health outcomes. So yes, in overall, my articles emphasize the need for research as there isn't much at the moment, but there is a little surplus as I did notice a lot of articles were recent and they're currently searching more into this effect of slower processing speed and how it plays into these outcomes or mental health or even academics for adolescents. But yes, that's all I had for my research question. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was concise. Thank you so much. And here are my references. Yes. Okay. Thank you.